Ex-racist people of Reddit. What changed your views? When I was wounded in Iraq, two white guys stepped over me. One literally stepped on my back to get themselves to a safer place. A black guy picked me up like I was a child, carried me to safety, and held my hand until a medic got there. Grew up with a racist stepdad, and although I never actually felt hate towards anyone, I would laugh at and repeat the jokes. Until I was kicked out at 18, I had only met a Mexican family, my adopted neighborhood family, and a black guy I was friends with from school. They also made the jokes about their race and laughed along depending on the crowd. Wasn't till I got older that they were doing that to fit in, and cold been living somewhat in fear. After being kicked out, I moved around a few times before finding a job working with developmentally disabled adults. I was hired as a white guy. The company and all the workers were all born in Africa and moved to the US. It was a cultural shock at first, but they immediately became family. They taught me how to cook, how to treat others, and their culture. They even made sure to teach me how they were treated in public by citizens and police. Since then I haven't made or laughed at a single racist joke. I've made sure to look at everyone the same way no matter. And I've made sure to try and help others understand how their actions may not be racist, but they can still be hurtful. I've met so many beautiful people that I wouldn't have had the chance to talk to had I followed that influence growing up. If anyone who has any racist thoughts and is reading this, please just sit down and have a meal with someone. You'll be surprised how much you have in common while also having such different lives. Not me, but my grandpa told me that when he was young he was a bit racist due to his whole alcoholic dad being really racist and teaching him to treat others of different races like trash. He told me this stopped though when he was around 13. When his dad left, he realized how stupid it was to judge others based on race, and I'm glad he realized how stupid it was, since he's a really sweet guy now. Man, I don't even know where to start with this one. I grew up in the middle of Ducking Nowhere, Mississippi, where the slave trade was referred to as the Great African Migration in our history books. Every person of color was referred to by the N-word as just the default. It wasn't until I moved the duck out of the South that I began to comprehend what racism was. I wish I could say I had a moment of clarity that washed away all the racist BS that I'd grown up with, but it was more like a couple decades worth of mental deprogramming I had to fight against. There was so much underlying hate of different people that warped how my view of the world was. My grandma grew up in Virginia in the 1900s. Being racist is just the default setting. Nana loved her family more than anything, though. So at one point in the late 1980s, she met her first not 100% white grandkid and discovered she still loved him. She made astounding late life progress accepting that darker skin toned people were not only people, but family, friends and welcome in her house. Not me, but my best friend's parents. They told her not to touch me because she would get my skin disease. I'm a brownie, and at the time we met I was 12. They didn't want us to be friends, but I would always be kind and polite to them, full well knowing how they felt about my skin color. One year my friend, at this point best friend, was having a sleepover birthday party and her parents said I could come, but couldn't sleep over. My friend cancelled her party and her parents must have felt like complete shit because they started to talk to me more and more after that. We have been best friends for almost 30 years now. Her parents came to my wedding. They send me a Christmas card every year. They call me and ask how I'm doing. And they invite me to their get-togethers. I'm glad they came around, and I'm proud of them. Your best friend is a champ. For real. I don't know how old they were at the time, but that's a pretty ducking gutsy move for a kid. Props to them for standing up for their friend at the expense of their own party. My dad would make disparaging remarks about black people, Mexicans, Chinese people, etc. When I was a kid, I remember repeating those same sentiments and no one ever corrected me. In first grade, we were all assigned pen pals from a school in another city and mine was a black girl named Chardonnay. I thought she had a weird name, and I was disappointed when I found out she wasn't white. Very soon after that, We learned some very basic info about the civil rights movement during Black History Month. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, separate water fountains, segregated schools, stuff like that. After that, I felt really bad about being racist and wanting a different pen pal, and really ashamed of my dad and grandparents for thinking that way, and I was so mad that they'd taught me to think that way. After that, I was really happy to have the opportunity to write to my pen pal and get to know her better. I'm so thankful that my school started teaching us about racism early on. It's scary to think how I could have ended up if those sentiments had gone unchecked. Brother was racist. We both love science fiction. One time he was talking about all the cool races in the Star Wars and Star Trek and Mass Effect universes. How creative Lucas and Roddenberry were. He talked about how great it would be to be among those races as a human and acquaint yourself with alien cultures and people and mythology. I said, you can't even mingle with the other races on your home planet. Maybe it was the weed. But what I said had some effect on him. He's very noticeably more tolerant and curious about other peoples now. I think he realized that his previous philosophies were not in line with those of the Federation. Good for him. I grew up in a white bubble. White neighborhood. White schools. White friends. I wasn't hate-filled or anything towards other races. Just a bit nervous due to zero experience. I heard a lot of racial epithets, but didn't say them myself. Going to college, I met many people of many different races, and found most of them were good people. I discovered that the same 10% asshole to 90% good people I found among white people at my high school translated to college as well. The assholes were not grouped in a particular minority, but pretty universally scattered. Mom was surprised when I brought home a girlfriend from college who wasn't white. Mom asked why I didn't tell her in advance, but I didn't think it was important. I married that girl a few years later. A guy I worked with said he was neo-Nazi as a teenager and ended up in prison somehow. He hated Jews for some reason, and blacks. He was never clear on why, just that he had so much hatred in his heart, and that was his outlet. He was in prison for many years. I think he almost killed somebody by beating them up. So, many years later, and in prison there was a mentor type staff there, and this one lady was so helpful to him. And she cared about him so much that it really started to get into his head the idea of being a positive person. Then, he learned that she was Jewish, and he said he couldn't believe she was so kind and caring despite the fact he was a claimed neo-Nazi. From that day he swore to be a better person. He learned his lesson. He's a pretty great guy these days, doing his family thing and making sure his son grows up with lots of love and all that he didn't have. Really remarkable. Great guy. I didn't realize I was racist and being raised in a racist household until 4th grade. I was in a group project having to give a presentation to the class. My group was me and 2 black girls. My parents hated black women. Black people in general, but especially black women, as they both watched tennis. You can guess all the shit they said about the Williams sisters. Meanwhile, there I was standing there watching my group mates talk. They were just as good, if not better than me, at talking in the class, or understanding the material, or anything really. I can still see that moment where the class fades away in my mind and one of my group mates is talking to the class, where I realize a fundamental truth: my parents were wrong. It still makes me sad thinking about stuff I remember saying as a kid, regurgitating things I heard my parents or relatives say. But in my experience, as I have gotten older, is that the one way to combat racism is to bring people into the same room. When people have shared experiences, that sense of otherness fades away. Of course, in 2021 and the internet bring what it is, it's really easy for people to hide in their own corners of the internet. But I'm thankful for that experience in 4th grade. I got in trouble a lot over the years for getting mad when family would throw around the N-word or lock their doors when they saw black people. But I knew I was right, and in the decades that have passed, nothing has tarnished or taken away that childhood lesson. Joined the military, left home and experienced cultures around the world. I wouldn't say I was ever racist and thought I was better than anyone, but I was severely lacking in cultural awareness due to growing up in a small town. surrounded by openly racist people. Luckily, my children are able to grow in a completely different environment than the one I did. I never made the choice really to be racist, but I grew up in South Mississippi and my family wasn't overtly racist, but they were the kind to say racist things behind closed doors and didn't allow us to watch TV shows such as The Cosby Show or Fresh Prince, and definitely no rap music in the house. I absolutely fell in love with a lot of black artists in the early 90s. I loved the hip hop scene at the time, and holy crap, Fresh Prince was the best sitcom on television. I played football with 80% black guys and worked at Pope's Chicken with over half the staff being black. I guess you can say my own real world exposure, despite their attempt to shelter me, changed me. I cringe at some of the vernacular I used in my early youth, as the N-word was the same as black in my house. I literally was not raised to know that was a bad word. I'm glad that from the age of maybe 12 on I learned to love all people on my own. As a lurker, this is a thread I can contribute to. From birth I was raised to be racist in a racist household. I was ignorant. I used the N-word, anti-Semitic, homophobic, racist language every day. My immediate family and extended family all share the same ignorance. At family gatherings, if one of my older cousins let slip they were dating someone new, the first question would be, is he white? Followed by laughter. But the question was serious. Then I started middle school, 6th grade. On the first day of class I set down my backpack against the classroom wall like every other student while we found our desks and had a small meet greet. New classmates. I made sure to only speak to the kids white whom I knew from elementary school. Our teacher told us to take our seats. I'm 42 years old and I remember this like it was yesterday. I picked up my backpack, found my desk. Before I could open my bag, the girl behind me told me she liked my earrings. Her mom wouldn't let her get her ears pierced until high school. Then I heard another voice from further behind me say, "Miss K, this isn't my backpack." The backpack sitting on this girl's desk was identical to the one sitting next to my desk. We both opened our backpacks and realized we'd grabbed the wrong bag. Internally I rolled my eyes in disgust. This girl was a N, but I was taught to never let it show. So we met each other to quickly exchange. Her smile was beautiful. She wore glasses the same shape as mine. She wore her hair in a ponytail, just like mine. In our back to school shopping we picked the exact same backpack, and we picked the exact same Nikes pink white. Her name was Jacinda. I found myself genuinely smiling back to her and giggling like young girls do. That day she asked to sit together during lunch, and we sat beside each other for lunch every single day of middle school. She was my very first best friend. Jacinda taught me about her Sunday school classes. My family never attended church. We talked about everything important in the life of middle school girls. She wasn't allowed to attend my birthday parties, and I wasn't allowed to go to hers. But we always celebrated together at school. I loved her so much. When it was time to go to high school I continued in public school and her parents chose to homeschool her. I thought homeschooling was the coolest idea. Jacinda was as brilliantly intelligent. She was going to do great things for this world. Long before the age of social media. We lost touch sadly, but I still think of her often. After meeting Jacinda I never used another racist or derogatory word. Meeting Jacinda changed my life for the better. Learning about people by talking to them instead of listening to what my family had to say about them. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.